r/ask Reddit. Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? Was allowed chihuahua at the dinner table. He developed a complex and literally needed out as he couldn't bear to eat with her. Open bracket. Edit. This has gone gangbusters. Thanks guys. This sounds like a Seinfeld B-plot. She's an audible masticator. George. I can't handle it. I've been taking her for soft food, soup, noodles. Once I told her this breakfast place had the best oatmeal in town just so she wouldn't order the French toast. Taught the parakeet certain cuss words for his wife. Hahaha. The parrot lives with the man now. I thought about going towards family law, and then I realized I'm gonna have to deal with things such as who's gonna get the parrot and grandma's vase. Nope. Now you see that technically falls under bird law. I worked for a law office where the owner would talk about the man who sued for divorce because his wife would no longer allow him to use a loaded gun as a marital aid. She had apparently agreed to it at some point and was fine with the gun as long as it was empty, but that just wasn't good enough for him. ETA, since some folks need it spelled out. By marital aid, I mean a dildo. He wanted to stick a loaded gun in her vagina as part of their sex routine. She was down for it as long as the gun was empty, but that wasn't good enough, and he thought this was reasonable grounds for divorce. Also, I wasn't trying to be pretentious by saying marital aid. I just really didn't want to have to type out that he wanted to use a loaded gun as a dildo. But I guess nobody's leaving this thread happy today. Duck. Yeah, that's ducking terrifying. My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny pinching hell. Examples. He was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all, he kept one toilet paper roll on him at all times and you had to get one square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than one square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1. He gave her bangs during an in-home haircut and 2. Their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. Also, he hated paying his divorce lawyer bill. He was also an old-fashioned mega Catholic who considered divorce a deadly sin. He viewed my whole job as an unnecessary and sinful expense. Holy shit, 1 square? 1 ducking square? Does he shit rabbit pellets? That guy is a monster. Yep, that got me. 2. If I was the wife I'd start wiping myself with his shirts or something. He doesn't like it? Well, give me some ducking toilet paper, then. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. He did not have enough hair on his chest. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Shit, yeah, it would have been embarrassing to show up late at a pool party and your man not having a decent chest bush. A luscious mane of hair from my chest pubes down to my ball throw. Wasn't the reason but did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap they were ducking Tupperware. Holy shit. I read this as grandmother's bowels and was very concerned. I dropped into court to visit a family friend who was a judge and had quite a treat. A wealthy area farmer and his wife were in court that day fighting about possessions assets. The judge had had enough. After briefly reviewing the history of their case he offered the couple one last opportunity to retire to a conference room and come to an agreement. Both refused. Their lawyers were clearly as weary as the judge. The judge then asks each party which room in their house was their favorite room. She picked the kitchen and he picked his gun room. The judge then informed them that because the matter had dragged on for so long with both behaving like children he was going to decide the matter of the property. She was awarded everything in the kitchen and he the gun room. Everything else was to be sold at auction with the profits equally divided. Then the judge told them, "Now neither of you is happy, right?" They clearly were not. Haha. Colleague handled a case where money was not an issue but the kids were. Neither parent wanted them. My parents always told each other when they were fighting that if they got divorced the other had to keep me and my brothers. On a positive note, you kept your parents' marriage together. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually her family managed to pay and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty but outrageous as how absurd that is. Edit to answer all the questions. I don't know how much they wanted as ransom, but it was substantial as the conversation between her family and him was how he had it liquid and they had to liquidate investments to get that amount. She may have told me, she may not, something in pesos and I didn't know the conversion rate. It was all a random number to me. This happened about 7 years ago. He wasn't with her on the trip. She was traveling with cousins and went downstairs alone to get ice cream and wait for them to get ready. I do not know all the details. She was extremely distraught talking about it and it was not necessary to pry. It was clearly traumatic and even tough. I had a million more questions. I left it alone. Honey, I love you, but we agreed to save up money so we can purchase a house. Your ransom would really set us back. I don't really think I can add a ransom line item to this month's budget. Everything is already super tight. Edit. I'm curious if you have a line item for Reddit Gold, because if not it seems like reckless spending. Edit 2. Reckless. How embarrassing. Edit 3. Thank God my top comment isn't about being a cam girl anymore. I had some friends get divorced because she legit hated Dale Earnhardt and he legit hated Jeff Gordon. NASCAR fans from 1995 to 2005 would not consider this a petty issue. Oh man, this brings back childhood memories. Kind of related story that totally doesn't matter. Growing up my dad was big into NASCAR and loved Dale Earnhardt. Hated Jeff Gordon of course. I love Dale too, but I also secretly loved Jeff and hid it. I must have been around 6-8ish. One day while the race was on, I was so upset about betraying my dad or something by liking Jeff Gordon that my mom found me crying in my room. After I told her why I was upset, she went and got my dad and he sat and told me it was okay for me to like Jeff Gordon even if he doesn't. That I'm allowed to like whatever I want that makes me happy, and that nothing more would make him happier. Then he hugged me and told me to come watch the race and cheer him on. Later that week he got me a number 24 sticker to put on my mirror in my room. IDK. I don't have very many good memories in my life but that is one of them. Edit. Y'all. I'm a girl, so some of these jokes don't work lol. Paralegal here. Still remember an early case I worked on. Man divorced his wife for her bingo addiction. 10 to 12 times per week she went to bingo. She was 82, he was 86, but the all-time greatest, two 20-somethings. They were irreconcilable because he kept smoking her weed stash when she wasn't home. To be fair, him smoking all her weed multiple times, assumingly after some kind of hey man don't smoke all my weed conversation, is a pretty valid reason to not be able to trust someone. Yep, my mother-in-law and her husband were living in my house for a few months until they got their housing situation sorted out. After the couple of weeks or so I thought my weed stash was a little light. After about a month I realized there was no way I was going through it that fast. Then one day I left work early and found them in the garage taking rips from my bong. They aren't allowed to be alone in my house anymore. Like shit. I would have given you some weed if you had asked. The dog he bought me pissed on the carpet. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. To be fair, it really tied the room together. That's just like your opinion, man. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. I dated a girl that didn't speak to me for a day or two because I got her an iPad instead of jewelry. Her reasoning was, because I could just use yours. I am glad that relationship is over. Seems like an expensive way to find out your girlfriend is a selfish jerk. Edit. Okay guys, I get it. iPads aren't that expensive in comparison to other things. It's all relative, people. iPads are expensive for some people and not for others. Edit 2. Now y'all are complaining about the people complaining about it not being expensive. Make up your minds, people. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding and moved out at around 5 AM during the first night. Marriage speedrun. Your princess is in another castle. Not a divorce lawyer but used to practice criminal defense work. once had a heavily pregnant client that attacked her husband, of less than a year, with an iron. Said client was now sitting in a police cell, sobbing and insisting that her husband deserved it and she wanted a divorce. I asked what he had supposedly done, assuming he'd cheated or something similar. Turns out she'd checked his phone and found a single porn site in his browsing history from over 2 years beforehand. Not the most pleasant thing to discover, but hardly worth battering him half to death and demanding a divorce. Not the most pleasant thing to discover, but hardly worth battering him half to death and demanding a divorce. Do people really care if their partners watch porn? I've never understood it. My girlfriend of 10 years wouldn't give a shit if I had porn in my browsing history, nor would I care if she did. It's just porn. Each to their own, I guess. For me personally, it wouldn't be an issue unless it was something particularly bizarre. Edit. To save time replying to comments. I'm not kink shaming here. At least not intentionally. Within the confines of my relationship, and knowing my other half pretty well, I would consider certain things to be bizarre by our standards. That is to say, outside of what would be normal for us. For other individuals and or relationships, what constitutes bizarre will vary considerably, and that's absolutely fine. Provided everyone's a consenting adult. Do whatever you like. Everyone's different. No one has all the answers. Everyone's worldview has value in and of itself. Edit no. 2. Thanks for the silver random person. I'll stand you a pint at the weekend, sure. He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or two full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any two people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these. He gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto one page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. Once the decree was signed and filed, she hauled all the scrapbooking stuff to the yard, and he removed it to the dump. She then called a junk shop I referred her to and had all of his cars removed from the yard. Edit. These two also fought over a toilet brush, as he didn't want to have to buy one when he moved out. I politely instructed my client to give him the goddamn toilet brush. Edit 2. Thanks for the silver. Kind stranger. That's the first award I've ever gotten. Yay. Edit 3. Ermajid. Gold. Thanks. This is so petty and so stupid. Holy jeez. Agreed. But it was effective. From what I can tell, they're both much happier now, and to some degree, I think it helped them understand that they didn't need the crap they'd been hoarding. He got drunk at the wedding. She did not like it, and decided to divorce him right after the honeymoon, which she went without him. Moreover, this was all an elaborate scheme of divorce robbery, because the guy was loaded, and so was his entire family. They were loaded because they were a family of excellent lawyers, and he was a third-generation lawyer, with all the smarts and experience of his predecessors combined. Let's just say it did not go well for her. That's gotta be the dumbest decision ever, right? That's literally like a 7-year-old punching a Marine in their prime. Dough. Right smack in the prime. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client shocker started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a loot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. The medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. Oh my god. That is ducking horrible. Edit. And so my most upvoted comment is the one that where everyone bring up their worst anecdotes. Thank you for answering, and I am sorry for your situations. Losing control of your mind is horrible in itself. It being caused by a medical error is even worse. Happens more than you think. My brother was misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder. He was prescribed Seroquel. You don't duck around with Seroquel. When he took it without having BD, then he basically started having symptoms of BD. Messed him up for a long time. Edit 1. Acronyms. Edit 2. Wording. I did not mean to make a blanket statement about Seroquel. Different people respond to drugs differently. This is just what my brother experienced. Edit 3. Apparently the acronyms I used for edit 1 was still wrong. Thank you, internet strangers, for correcting me. I didn't like her anymore 2 days after being married. In sickness and in heath, till disinterest do you part. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1 had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medication she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heater, freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with AC, fans, and bags of ice, surprising it out. He would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo, he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note, this guy was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for the divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation, as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. That one's just sad. My uncle has schizophrenia, and my grandaunts tried to convince my grandmother, his mom, to have an exorcist come instead of letting him stay on his medications. It's probably one of the reasons my grandmother stopped talking to them much. It pains me to think he could have gone through all of that if he'd been one of my grandaunt's son instead of my grandmother's. I used to work in a general practice firm and the guy that worked across the hallway from me was a family law attorney. He was a good attorney but every day I would hear him yelling on the phone at his clients. One day I asked him why he did when it was obviously stressful in a non-legal work type of way. He pointed out that there's one chapter of statutes dedicated to it, and you need to know a little civil procedure and that's about it. It's an amazing segment of business. Not only is not that difficult from an intellectual rigor perspective, but holy shit, those family law attorneys make serious bank for willing to put up with the headaches. I would routinely hear him yelling at clients like, "Don't go over there. I'm instructing you to not go there. If you go there, I will fire you as a client and when you go to jail I won't take your call, comma." For the record, this was in a fairly affluent suburb. Most of the disputes that would drive him into my office for a break would revolve around parents wanting to know their recourse for ex-hubby dropping the kids off 4 minutes later than agreed and how the client planned to get even. I also recall one time a client had gotten his cell phone number and called him on a Saturday evening with some emergency. Spoiler, his ex had done something egregious like took the kids to the pool without his consent. So, on Monday morning the attorney sent the client an invoice for $500 for a Saturday phone call, which probably lasted like 5 minutes. He did it so the guy would call him and say "What's this?" and then the attorney could explain to him that is what he charges for non-emergency weekend calls. This time he'd waive it but if he ever did it again he could be sure to get a bill that he'd end up paying. If someone called me on the weekend for something that petty I'd need my own lawyer. Not a civil lawyer either, a criminal defense one. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole L&P custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader / psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross, ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters. So my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was the psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money and 2, he would be able to repay the ex when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there. Which my judge read as my psychic told me to kidnap my kids. TL. Doctor, deadbeat ex-husband spent all his money on a psychic rather than child support. Told the judge he intended to kidnap his children. Edit. Words. What happens in a case like that when you admit in open court to the possibility of doing the country with the kids? I mean, If he's already not paying child support, is there anything the court can do to improve matters? Garnish his wages? Also, why didn't the psychic warn him about being brought to court? Edit. In case it's not obvious, this last was a joke at the psychic's expense. Good question. Can't speak for the psychic other than she obviously has a bankroll from this guy, so she's not going to jeopardize that with, facts. A garnishment is an option, but that also assumes his income stream is from a legitimate business, which was an issue at the hearing as well. You can also ask the court to hold him in contempt and throw him in jail if he doesn't pay his arrearage. But jailing someone for not paying you is the fastest way to not get paid. Once you see evidence like that, the court is most likely going to grant the modification and take away your custody rights. But, as many people have pointed out elsewhere, it's really hard to terminate a legal father's visitation rights, much less his legal parenting rights. Plus, it sounds like he was planning to commit parental kidnapping. But if you charge him and send him to jail, then poof, there goes any chance for child support. Long story short, domestic work is a nightmare land of catch-22s. My grandfather's brother was a judge who presided over state issue marriages from time to time. One couple he married returned 6 months later to confirm the wedding and end their trial marriage. When he thusly informed them that there was no such thing and that they had been married for 6 months, they subsequently broke up. That sounds nutty, but if you believed your so when they told you trial marriages were a real thing, that betrayal could very easily end a marriage. Not me, but a friend. My mum has divorced her husband because his mother still coddled him at age 40, with his consent. They lived with his mother, common in Asia. By coddle I mean that she would walk straight into their room after his shower and powder his back for him. They couldn't lock their bedroom door because his mother would come in as and when she wanted. If they locked the door, she would knock repeatedly asking what they were doing. LOL, what would they be possibly doing? Playing poker? That's ducked up. I bet mother expected grandkids ASAP as well. Beach is coke blocking at every opportunity. My sister's mill made some comment when they announced her pregnancy about how they could have conceived through artificial insemination. Like Beach, they had been married for 6 years at that point. What do you think they've been doing? And this is the same woman who referred to their dogs as grandpups because she wanted grandkids so badly. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. God forbid he invests in a sleep mask. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked shit about him whilst he was there. Was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. Edit. Oopsie. I need to know if she was actually speaking French or if he married a Spanish speaker and misidentified the language. LMAO. He spoke English and Spanish. Could not get the hang of French. Her family of Spanish, but they would only speak French when they are around him. Her family do not like him and she is a strange one. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I shit you not. A recently married couple of 2 years broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw connection between the dog and future children. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.